All right, thank you so much for having me. Achieve Virtual Conference. What a timely message. Redefining the employee-employer relationship. And Katasha, your presentation that you just gave was wonderful. You couldn't see me because my video was off, but I was out here dancing, thinking that was such a timely message and ties exactly in what I want to talk about today. My name is Josh Dreen. I guess I'm going to scoot over a little bit here. I am co-founder and CEO of Dreen Media, a consulting and creative agency that focuses on developing human-centric media. And I am also global brand growth strategist at SoWork, which is a platform developing the workplace metaverse. And I'm on staff at the Harvard Innovation Labs talking about employee experience with young startups. So before we jump in too far about redefining the employee-employer relationship, I just want to share this real quick. Let's look at relationships that have been in the news lately. Do you recognize this individual? This is the CEO of Better.com, who not long ago fired 900 employees via Zoom. It wasn't received very well, as you could imagine. In fact, it was international news, and he was invited to take an indefinite leave of absence. You have Ellen DeGeneres, who is known for her motto, be kind, and yet employees are saying that is just a facade and that she actually is masking a workplace culture that is toxic. And we've seen what has happened to her career since then. You have CEOs like Travis Kalanick of Uber, the CEO of Away, and Ron Gutman of HealthTap. They are all accused of employee mistreatment and have had to step down. And when you really look at the behavior of these CEOs, it kind of feels like that was common grounds. That's how employees acted 20 years ago. And we're starting to see a huge shift in that power that leaders have in organizations towards the employee. So with the rest of my time that I have with you, I want to talk about employee power, what it is, how employees are leveraging it post-pandemic, and how we can adjust our employee experience initiatives so that we can act on that data. Korn Ferry puts out a large body of research at the beginning of the year, and they put all of their eggs in this basket. They said the last 24 months have changed everything for business, for leaders, for employees. Now as the dust settles, one fact becomes clear. Power has shifted from organizations to people, from profit to mutual prosperity, from me to we. Employees are starting to ask human questions about the work they perform. Why am I doing this? What is it for? How can we do it better? Many are choosing to leave their jobs. The competition to attract new talent is growing fiercer than ever. And I believe it is because employees now have more power than they've ever had before. And it's not just me saying this. This is my good friend David Johnson, who is a principal analyst at Forrester. He just did a webinar where he talked about employee power. He says it is the 800-foot gorilla, 800-pound gorilla, I guess. An 800-foot gorilla would be very intimidating, King Kong. This is how he defines it. Employee power is the choice that each employee makes every single day, whether they are willing to give 100% of themselves to the organization or manager. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. You can hire an employee, but you can't make them work. I feel like that was kind of the vibe pre-pandemic, or, in the Industrial Revolution, it was a relationship. It wasn't a relationship. It was a contract, as Jason Larson talks about quite a bit. And nowadays, that relationship comes to the forefront. What is that relationship? Employees are deciding it's not a good one, and I want to leave. And they do in droves. So before we talk about the specifics there, I just want to kind of look at the three types of employee power and how they've been used over the years. I also see in a comment the presentation is blurry, or is it just me? Let me know if this is blurry, if you can't see it, because I can fix that, as well as make these slides available to you. So the three types of employee power. The first is established power, whether granted from a title or a developed expertise. This is power that an organization hands to an employee based on where they are in the org chart or just how good they are at doing their job. The second is collective power, or the aggregate of employee experience. This is where you have unions come together, and we're seeing unions pop up more and more. Amazon and Apple. It's a huge deal watching the collective power of employees, and Walmart has been seeing this for years, where someone starts a Facebook group, employees are experiencing similar problems, and before you know it, they're all protesting outside of 1,600 Walmart stores. This is the power that employees have collectively. And finally, and I would argue is what we are talking about today, is engaged power, or that employee's choice to give 100% or not to the organization. Because of the Great Resignation, and I agree with you, Katasha, not the greatest, it feels a little defensive, but when you look at it, you leave a relationship that is unhealthy. My wife is a marriage and family therapist, which means I go home to therapy every night. And in her world, the research shows that the individual that has the most power in the relationship is the one who values it the least. I mean, management, leadership, those stakeholders who have equity in the company, they care a lot about the relationship. Employees, not so much. They're kind of the bottom of the barrel, and they're not going to put up with that anymore. They value the relationship the least, so they're going to leave, and that leaves a lot of damage control for companies. So with that, I just want to look at 4 facets of employee power. This isn't an all-encompassing list, but this to me is how employees have power and how they're leveraging it in today's world and how we can help that. And I love how Katasha kind of focused on what we as leaders can do. I want to get down into the trenches. I want to see what the employees are thinking and feeling and how we can empathize with that. Because after all, isn't it about that employee experience that is going to change the tides of how the relationship is viewed at the organization? The first is the power of withholding info. And I don't mean this in a way of like holding back company secrets or not sharing, the whole contract, like the innovations that you come up with this organization is owned by the organization. I'm talking specifically about that employee data. And it's interesting. I love to ask this question to employees as we are consulting with organizations. This question just changes the perspective a little bit. It says, when was the last time you provided feedback to your employer because you knew they were using that data for your benefit? If I'm an employee, why should I give you feedback? I mean, I'm happy to do so if things change in any way, but if things are just going to continue to be the way that they are, it kind of feels like you're taking advantage of me by me giving you valuable information that you need, and I get nothing out of that relationship. We can't just view employee engagement surveys, which, by the way, that's an $878 million industry. Huge. There are hundreds of software options on how you can track employee engagement survey. But the big problem with the industry, in my mind, is that you can't control for honesty. And honestly, why should employees be honest with the organization? I think that's an important question that we should be asking. What are they getting out of the relationship? Is it because the company is really going to do something about it? Or is it because they're just going to use it potentially to leverage over me? And I feel like that's the answer I hear more and more is, well, I don't want to be honest because that could come back to me. Yeah, it's anonymous. Sure, I get it. But somehow this is going to get back to me and I'm going to be labeled as a detractor. Or it's not going to fix the culture anyway. It's just not a great environment. I will say this. Employees are not experiencing survey fatigue. That's the fun answer that we always throw out there is like, yeah, but we can only survey so much because they're experiencing survey fatigue. No. Employees are suffering from inaction fatigue. We're not doing anything with that data. At least, and maybe we are behind the scenes, but we're not communicating that to the employees. And that should be first and foremost. That's one of the things that we do at Dream Media is try to connect that. Like, yes, you're designing some really cool experiences for employees, but then we don't actually communicate it to them through human-centric media. That's what we're trying to do is let's take the next step and communicate. So that's the power of withholding information. If we can build an authentic and transparent environment, sharing this data with employees honestly and openly and say, look, we don't have the solutions right now, but I want to let you know that we're hearing you and we're working on it. This is what we're going to be listening for. We'd love to get your feedback. And this is a generation, the bulk of the workforce being millennial or Gen Z, they're used to immediate feedback through social media. So they'll understand. We need to get to that action component. The power of withholding effort. This one's an interesting one because I think the Great Resignation has really shined a light on how bad things really are, right? I know we've been inundated with stats. I'm just going to read a couple here for you. A Gallup poll suggests that 55% of Americans are looking for a new job. Quit rate is the highest it's been in decades at 2.7%, and a whopping 38 million workers quit their job last year. Employers are offering crazy perks to maintain employees, and I think it's fascinating. The Great Resignation is an outward manifestation of the experience, but there's something happening underneath the surface that scares me even more. I mean, you're watching employees prefer the unknown of unemployment. They don't even have a job set up in some cases than the experience that they've had at this current job. And I just saw a stat recently that 14% are leaving the workforce altogether, mostly working mothers, which is a travesty. But when we hear these stats and we say, wow, that's a big jump, what I think about is that there are millions of employees who are afraid of unemployment, who are afraid to leave their work, and they are experiencing burnout. A recent survey by Mercer just put out says that 81% of Americans are on the verge of burnout. This is self-reported data over 10,000 employees are this close to burning out. So in order to manage that burnout, what do? They don't go find another job that's too scary, that sounds like more burnout, so they scale back their efforts. They don't do as much, and it's so much easier to do it in today's world. When we work remote, when there's not as much visibility into their workflows, a lot of them just aren't working as much. And on the flip side, they're working even more. So it's just kind of an interesting thing that we're dealing with. The power to subvert culture. I think this is an interesting one. So back in my 20s, I used to be a youth motivational speaker. So I did assembly programs in middle schools and high schools across the country. And in these presentations, I would do the big assembly with all the kids, bring them in. I would do a teacher's in service. I would do some consulting with the principals and the leadership. I would do a parents' night. And the most valuable presentation that I did was after the assembly, I would bring the student leaders into the room, sit them down, and then I would dismiss all leadership from the room at that school. And then I just kind of sit with the students and be like, all right, so tell me honestly, what is going on at this school? And, I'm a third party here. I'm someone that they can trust. It was fascinating to hear the stories coming out of it. The drama, they would show me their TikToks, their Snapchats, and they would show me kind of the things that they were saying. And it was so apparent that regardless of the culture of the school, the organization, the subculture had a life of its own. Whether we like to agree with that or not, it's happening in our organizations. Employees, sure, on this culture call where we're like, yeah, that's amazing, sure. We'll take whatever you dump on us. We'll say that that's right. And then they're slacking in the background. Yeah, this is never going to work. So we need to learn how to take that subculture and bring it into the foreground. And a lot of that deals with trust. If you can create a trusting environment, you can make it happen. I was literally on my way to the gym this morning. I listened to Josh Berson's podcast, and his research shows that 1 in 10 companies that are designing employee experiences actually bring the employee to the table to help with that experience. Does anyone not think that that's just absolutely insane? That the people we're designing these experiences for, we're not even really talking to them. And I feel like if you change one thing today, do that. Take employee voices, bring them to the table, bring them into a room, say, can you help us shape this culture? Guarantee if they're a part of it and they take responsibility, they'll be much more willing to follow it. And finally, the power to whistleblow experience. I think this is interesting. We talked about some big versions of that with the CEOs. But how does this play out on a micro scale every single day at the organization? Customers are already doing this. They whistleblow their experiences all the time. I mean, take one look at this slide. Is this a valuable product or not? You probably can't see it. It's really small. I can tell within a second that people love this because it's got 4.5 stars on 6,766 ratings. You can look at the ratings and see people's experience and know that's probably good. On the flip side, if it's a 1 star, the product probably isn't that great. We do this all the time in the customer experience world where we're designing customer experience specifically for them and we're obsessed with it. It's time to start doing that with employees. And I'm not the only one that's been saying this. We've been saying it for a very long time. Same thing with like Yelp reviews. I lived in Boston for 6 years, and I know that you do not go to the website of the organization to find out if the pizza is good or not. I mean, look at this. It's probably not even a photo of their own food. It's a stock image that they grabbed. I know that this is a polished and their best foot forward. This is probably not going to be my experience. In fact, I know it's not going to be my experience because I learned as a kid that those McDonald's hamburgers are not that good when you actually get there. Not even close. So what do I care about? The Yelp reviews. When I look at that and I go in there and I see that there are 58 reviews at 3 stars, someone got food poisoning and the food looks like this, probably not super interested in it. All right. So I'm bringing all of this up just as fodder for us to think through, but what is the action item here? It really is just we need to design better experiences based on employee preferences for work. If we want a stronger and healthier relationship with employees, we got to come to the table. Katasha literally just said it's a two-way street, right? Well, it hasn't been for a really long time, and a lot of companies right now who don't allow that two-way communication are failing. It's all about designing employee experiences based on employee preferences. I say preferences. I don't even like that word. I feel like it should be something deeper, like based on what they're passionate about, what they care about the most in the world. They want to work for this organization. They want to do their best work. They don't want to be disengaged. We just need to obsess about their experience and make sure that we make that happen. All right, that's my timer saying that I am right at 18 minutes, so I'm going to pass it over to Greg. But thank you so much for your time. I would love to keep in touch with you. If any of you are building like killer, amazing experiences, you're designing them out, journey mapping, you're building personas, but you don't know how to communicate it quite yet to employees, that's where Dream Media comes in. We'd love to help you design your experiences. Thank you so much for your time. It's been an honor and a privilege, and we'll go ahead and turn it right on over.